There is absolutely nothing wrong with the image of Christ. Christ as a symbol, Christ as an image is the pinnacle of what has ever been and what will ever be. The purest form of Christ and the most honest story of Christ is completely beautiful, completely serene. There is absolutely nothing in the image of Christ that is destructive or wicked or false. The image of Christ is completely truthful and honest and generous and admirable. And most importantly, it's healthy and productive for society. However, you could probably notice and probably have noticed that society's representation and description of Christ, especially in Western civilization, have flipped what Christ stands for and what Christ represents completely backwards on its head. Instead of Christ being fearless and admirable and have a backbone, being fierce, just to name a few, they completely flipped that on its head and now are contributing the opposite attributes to Christ, like timidness and niceness and agreeableness. Modern culture has distilled and diluted the story of Christ to make it more readily accessible and have an easier time for people to attach themselves to it because it's not so confrontational and controversial. They're practically making a caricature of Christ that is applicable to like kids' books or movies or just the cultural zeitgeist going on in news and schooling systems. They're trying to distill it to where it's very easy to grab onto and understand on a surface level basis, particularly because the elitists of society have seen that there is a come up and a revolution and a gravitation towards people wanting Christ, wanting a connection to the divine, wanting a connection with God. The cultural elitists of society that are truly making the decisions for all of us have specifically seen that there is this revolution coming. There is this pattern of people reaching out and wanting something approximating the divine. This is factual, and you could see it throughout the past 20 years, especially after 2020. So they're making Christ a very easy and digestible image. One of the main ways that they do that is remove the controversial elements from Christ, which is his disagreeableness and his fiercity and his amount of strength and power and discernment. Because when you represent Christ with those attributes, aka his actual attributes, people that want to stay stuck in their own ways usually will not want to have an understanding about him or about those virtues. But more importantly, why would cultural elitists, big-time chess players of society, want the culture and the civilization to have those attributes and be looking up to those attributes of Christ, like discernment and having a backbone and being fierce and being anti-establishment and being revolutionary, which is specifically what Christ was standing for and what Christ was trying to do. It is everywhere inside of history and scriptures that was factually true. That is literally the reason why Christ got persecuted. So these cultural elitists and chess players that have their little grimy fingers on the puppet strings of CEOs and politicians, the last thing that they want is civilization to look up to something that is beautiful and strong. They want us to be functionally confused, virtually incompetent, infertile, unhealthy, and agreeable, distracted, and they want us to be fighting amongst ourselves instead of focusing on them. They want everything to be politicized and everything in our brain to be politicized. So we're not comfortable with our neighbor. The more that we're invested in politics and other people's personal beliefs or religious beliefs or political beliefs, the more that we are not focused on the actual horsemen, the actual main drivers in society that are taxing us and are changing us and are changing the schooling systems and are tampering with history and education. These are the people that have completely flipped the story of Christ. To get back on point, Christ is not timid. Christ is completely the opposite. But you probably have noticed how Christ has been represented as being a nice pushover hippie. Christ is not a hippie. Christ is not a pushover. Christ is not an agreeable pussy. Christ is incredibly fierce and incredibly embodied and aligned with his masculine traits and his feminine traits. The modern world only worships the lamb, but forgets about the lion. Without the lion, the lamb is meaningless. Mercy is only powerful when it comes from that who is able to conquer and destroy. And these are pinnacle fundamentals of the story of Christ and cornerstones of what his symbol represents. Christ is the archetype of what it means to be divinely masculine. Protector, warrior, king, teacher. A true Christ disrupts tyranny, threatens empires, and cannot be controlled. His authority scared both Rome and the Pharisees because it was real, pugnant power, not empty morality. And this is what they want you to forget about his symbol. This is what they want you to forget about the story and metaphor behind Christ. There's obvious connections you can make between society's deduction and condemnation on masculine traits, as well as all historical and religious figures. They really try to dumb them down. They want the utility completely diminished between divine masculine and divine feminine archetypes and naturalistic order. They do this with all religious figures. They deduce them down to their surface level representations, when the most beautiful and meaningful and powerful images and symbols, frequencies and vibrations are behind the surface always. It is always above the surface level. Yet they try to make all these pugnant, powerful religious figures, particularly Christ in this case, as low of an abstraction as they possibly can. Are they doing that particularly to make it more consumable, or are they doing that particularly to be able to misrepresent the actual symbols and stories that those religious figures hold? I would go with the latter. That seems more realistic, because at the end of the day, these people have all the resources, power, intelligence, knowledge on Earth. So how are they able to make such a catastrophic mistake unintentionally? Culture prefers a domesticated God, soft, tolerant, politically safe, and it is extremely obvious to see. Christ was so revolutionary in his time just purely because he was such a pugnant and powerful and honest and true image and person. Christ was born into a war zone between heaven and hell. One of the reasons why the image of Christ and the symbol and metaphor and meaning behind Christ transcends space and time is because that war between heaven and hell is still present, and people intrinsically know that. That's why he is still relevant. That's why he was risen. What Christ means and what Christ stands for has always been risen. It's always been here, and it will always be here, because what he represents is internal lightness. It's internal goodness, and what he condemns is wickedness and evil. Christ, right now, is able to destroy the establishments right now just through what he represents and means, and how he affects and transforms people's individual lives and souls. So if culture's understanding on Christ was completely true, the people in charge of the world would be at a great stake and at a great risk. When you idealize a timid representation or a timid idol, this creates timid people, and timid men produce collapsing societies. And when a society is collapsing and when all men are timid, that's when governmental tyranny and authoritarianism is able to act in full force, and people have a natural gravitas towards wanting to surrender to that governmental tyranny. I hope this video was pretty interesting. I'm happy that you are watching, especially watching to the end. That means a lot. Thank you very much for watching. I truly hope that there has been some sort of benefit from you watching this in your personal life or your personal psychology or mental health or spiritual health or whatnot. Hopefully my message was easily digestible enough. Sincerely, this seems like a very big problem in society, and I've seen it go on for quite some time, and it's always seemed relatively intentional. So I just wanted to get some of this information out there and see what you guys think, and lay some seeds in the soil and have them grow whatever fruit that seems to grow from them. And on that note, thank you guys and gals for watching. I greatly appreciate it. And remember, just stay as healthy as you possibly can and practice gratitude. Stay with your high discernment, stay with the light, and be gentle on yourself. And until next time, I hope you all have a good week, good day, good month, good year. And if I die tomorrow, I hope y'all have a great life. Let me know what you think in the comments. Anything, like even if you hate this video or hate something that I said or disagree with anything I said, please, if you disagree with anything I said, please put it in the comments. I'm not going to argue with you at all. I'm not going to argue with anything that you guys say in the comments, but I will talk to you and I will communicate with you and, have a conversation. If you like the video, like the video. If you dislike the video, dislike the video. If you want to subscribe, do all that stuff. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Until next time.